Hi, Brent. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. How you feeling today?
Yeah, I feel quite good. Obviously, I finished yesterday,
Yeah.
so I've been out with my dog, and I feel quite good. And I'm going to try and do maybe a gentle 3 mile run later, just to keep the legs going and just see how they are. But generally, I feel surprisingly quite good.
Good. Good. So let's. Obviously, I know we've chatted. I know what you've been up to the last couple of months, and I've followed your social feeds. Tell everyone what your challenges that you've been doing over the last couple of months.
So during lockdown, I wanted to do a challenge. I was seeing all these people doing these challenges, and then I saw the Chester Zoo appeal, and
Hmm.
that inspired me to do something. So I set a challenge to run half a marathon every day in June, and then the full marathon every day in July. Um, and then to finish it, I thought was quite a nice ending, is that I ran from Media City to Chester Zoo, which would be approximately 35 miles. I thought that would be quite a nice end to the sort of the challenge. So that's sort of how I came up with this challenge.
So it wasn't enough to run a half marathon a day in June and then a marathon a day in July. You thought you'd finish it off with an ultra.
Yeah, I just thought, let's just make it a bit more difficult for myself.
Why Media City? Do you live in Manchester? Do you?
Yeah, so I live at Salford Keys, so it was quite convenient to have media to start at Media City, and then I could join up to the canal path, which would take me over towards Chester. So it was all quite good, quite easy to plan, really, that route.
Cool. Okay. So so
Yeah,
so why Chester Zoo then? You touched on it there, but
yeah. So I've been working with children and adults with special educational needs for the last 10 years.
okay.
So that's taken me. I've been many times. I absolutely love their reaction when they see the animals. Um, Educational purposes, working in education, I think it's key. Conservation, zoos play a vital role now in conservation programs.
Mhm.
So that sort of combination was kind of why I thought, you know what, I want to do something in the northwest, and do something to with Chester Zoo, because they do such an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's a fantastic zoo. I mean, I'm not far away. I'm in Shropshire, so
Yeah,
I have fond memories of going to Chester Zoo as a kid with the family, and now, well, more recently taking my children there because it's obviously our closest zoo. It's an amazing place. It's a huge zoo as well, isn't it?
yeah, and I think that's why the appeal was so important, because it is so big. I mean, they look after what 35,000 animals, and it is a massive zoo. So
Mm.
it's a very special place. Yeah, it's
Yeah, very good. I remember coming out covered in bat poo the last time we went going through the bat cave.
that usually happens, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So why these distances then? Why a half marathon in June and then a marathon in July? Because what was your total mileage? Over 1,200.
Um, it was 1,238 was the miles I covered in the end.
Wow.
So I was, because I'd ran Africa 2 years ago. Um, I sort of do enjoy these challenges.
Yeah.
And I kind of, when I saw the Chester Zoo appeal, I was like, right, I want to do a challenge, but I don't want to do one where I completely push myself to the limit like I did in Africa. But so I just thought to myself, well, I'm in quite good shape. I've been running really well all year, and I thought, well, actually, if I do a month of half marathons,
Yeah.
that will ease me with some high mileage, and then I'll just do 1 month of marathon. So in my mind, the half marathons was almost like a stepping stone training into the month of the marathons.
Okay.
So I kind of came up with that idea, and then obviously I thought, have 2 days off and then run to the zoo, and that was just a nice ending.
Yeah.
Because I thought 2 months of full marathons, I didn't want to then finish it and then be like not have a period of time of not running. So I just wanted to do it like that.
Okay. I will ask you a little bit about Africa
Mm.
later on, and because I know you're planning on doing more. um,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So your half marathons were your warm up essentially then for your marathons, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's how I viewed it, because I kind of paralleled it to the Africa run, where it was marathon at least every day.
Yeah.
So I just felt that was a good, and I was starting to increase my mileage anyway, so I didn't feel like I was. pushing myself too far out of my comfort zone, but at the same time, it was, it was quite difficult, quite a challenge to run consecutive days, halves and marathons. It's still obviously pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I just felt that was the best way to fundraise, because I thought people following would just think, right, that man's crazy. I'll give a few quid.
So what sort of times were you doing the half marathons in at the beginning then, compared to the end of, just thinking about June? What did they look like?
So most of the half marathons were pretty much averaging 2 hours 15.
Yeah.
I seem to run these challenges about 9.5 minutes, 10-minute miles.
Mm-hmm.
Just to keep churning it over, because obviously I don't want to go too fast, and it's just about pacing yourself rather than the speed. So on average it was around 2 hours 15, and I was doing most of them actually in the morning, because obviously there's that really hot period in June.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot in the morning before it got too hot, and obviously doing it with costumes, I found that there was quite a lot of chafing with the heat.
Yeah, I bet. So, we'll come back to the costumes. So you're averaging them in about 2:15s, and it was hot. We had that really hot period, didn't we, when it was during lockdown. So what time were you going out to do those?
I was doing those. Sometimes I was going out about 5 in the morning, because I'm an early riser anyway.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, let's beat the heat. But then I was thinking sometimes it was a bit too early, because then being in the costume then was people weren't really seeing me. So I was having this battle of, I need to get this a bit right. And then obviously at the time when it got really hot, I was like, am I going to be able to do all of this in costume? Because it was starting to get really hot. So
yes.
I do run early, but then with July's weather and going into the marathon, July's been a lot cooler. So actually I was starting a bit later.
Okay, so what sort of times were you doing in July?
I was back at work, so obviously with lockdown, I wasn't in the school, so I was in the week I started the marathon, so I would be getting up at 4 o'clock to do 18 miles, and I'd work, and then I'd finish work, and then I'd do the rest of the marathon in the evening. So some of the days were kind of split.
Yeah.
And then I had to fit the running around work, because that came first. So it worked out quite well, because it made it more fun, because people could see me more in the different costumes. So I would do sometimes a morning session and then do my work and then go back out. So some of it was split, where other days it was continuous. Because in most challenges I've done, I actually preferred to get it all done in one chunk, obviously with a break, because then it's done and dusted. But this one, I kind of just thought, you know what, this challenge is more about fun than actually just going out and running. It's about just making people smile, making people laugh, and obviously going back to the costumes again. That's why it was all about having fun, really, in a time that we were all a bit sort of uncertain.
That's amazing. So you were getting up at 4 a.m. You were doing the majority of a marathon, then going to work, and where you're helping people.
Working with children with special educational needs, which is quite tiring in itself.
Yeah, so you've had a busy day at work, and then you'd come in and finish off your mileage. Dressed up again?
Dressed up, all of it was dressed up in costume. But it was that week I was at work, and then doing that I was really, really tired, because working in a classroom is mentally tiring.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have that dip naturally after work. So then all day I'm in my head, I'm thinking I've got to go out and do another 8, 9, whatever miles.
Yeah.
One of the days I did sleep in, so I had 18 miles left, I think it was 15, and I didn't start till 4:15 in the evening, in the afternoon. So that day was a bit more pressure, because you've got that pressure to cover such a distance in the evening, afternoon. So I was a bit like, oh no. But anyway,
so what?
You just got to stop moaning and get on with it.
What an attitude! Brilliant. So what's were your minutes per mile consistent then with in July again? Do you know that 9.5, 10-minute mile in? Is that what you do?
Yeah, when I look at my stats, it is quite consistent.
Yeah.
There are a few quicker ones in there, and there's a few slower ones in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think it's. And when I look back at my Africa times, and when I ran joggle, it all seems to be when I do these challenges, my comfortable sort of pace is about 9.5 minute miles on these big sort of back to back days. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. So you've mentioned your costumes. Tell us about your costumes. What did you have? And I mean, I've seen a few of them on social media. But
Yeah.
go on, tell us what you ran as and where you got your outfits from. And
Yeah, so I never set out to do it in fancy dress. The plan was always to do the last one in one outfit,
okay,
and then
why did it change?
I ordered the penguin because it was cheap. It was only like £14
Yeah.
on Amazon, and it arrived, and it was just, I don't know, people that have seen it online, it's one of those where it's got almost like a hula hoop, so it's quite wide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the head's got the penguin head and the eyes. And I just looked in the mirror and I just thought, do you know what? If I saw that running down a street and I was in a car or crossing the road, or and in the morning or in the evening, and you're like half asleep, or in the climate we're in, you're sort of having a bit of a flat day, and you just see this thing, you'll just go home and just say, I saw a penguin running today. Or it would make you smile, or it would make you think, what on earth's going on? So I loved that concept of just taking someone's mind out of the climate we're in and just having that bit of fun. And then so I thought, I'm going to do it all in costumes. So I went back online, and there's another cheap one, which was a parrot. So I got the parrot. So I started running in the penguin and the parrot, and then people's reaction was like laughter, smiling. The tram started to sound their horns. Someone took a video from a balcony from a flat and tagged in the Metro link, and then they tweeted the picture.
Yeah.
And it was starting to get like a positive vibe about it, and fun and not serious, which I thought we all needed.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, basically, cut a very long story short, I ended up ordering a giraffe, an inflatable rhino, a chameleon. I already had a bear because I had that when I did a marathon a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I had 6 costumes in total. And I would rotate them, and obviously some that you found you could run easier with, and some not so. But overall, when we had the heat in June, I discovered that you sweat an awful lot, and that equals a rather lot of chafing.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you deal with that then? And other injuries, actually. How? Because you're running so consistent. Do you get injured? What did you have any injuries? What other than chafing?
I mean, touch wood, and I don't know. I don't want to think too much about luck, but I've been very fortunate, and I didn't have one niggle on this run.
Wow.
Today I don't feel like I feel quite good. So injury wise, that's always been, I've been very lucky. I hope that luck continues. The chafing, that was a new dimension because I hadn't had chafing before, so I just used lots of Vaseline and stuff like that, and but then every time I then discovered it was in just, because literally it wasn't in one area, it was literally because your body in that heat becomes like a river. So you literally are, every time you move it could be under my arms one day, or it could be right across my back the other day. So it was just so when we got to July and it got a bit cooler, I was a bit like, oh, at least the chafing's having a rest, and it kind of disappeared, and then every time it got a bit hot, you could see that it would soon come back. But we haven't had that weather, have we, this month? So July. So I was quite lucky. I think I got less off.
Well, so what's your background? How do you must be quite genetically gifted not to get any niggles at all. I mean, that's amazing. Do you do a lot of strength work, or have you always ran? What?
I suppose this is the crazy bit. So a little bit about me is I left school with 2 GCSEs. My sister went to private school. She was very academic. My brother wanted to be a mechanic, so he had his drive, and I was always one of those. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think part of that then led on to me being a comfort eater. So by the age of 16, 17, I was, I don't know, going on 17 stone. I had 42-inch waist. I was always that person picked last at school, where the teacher then chooses which group you're going to go in. So I was never an active person. I never ran. I wasn't in a sports club. And then I came to Manchester, taught my way onto a degree, and then really for 10 years my life was like a cycle of self-destructive behaviour. So I got heavily into drink, heavily into drugs, and I suppose my life was just very chaotic in that circle. And then in 2006 I would have been 27.
Yeah.
It was a bet to run a half marathon. It was at the Christmas time, so I had 3 months to train for the Wilmslow half marathon.
Okay.
So I used to get up in the dark in an oversized hoodie. I hated it. I thought, what was the point? I thought, no, you're going to do it. You're going to what's 3 months of your life? In 3 months' time, I can be back going out clubbing, etc. Anyway, 3 months later, I lost probably about 3 stone.
So what sort of size were you then? Can you remember?
Do you know what? Because I must have been going on 17 stone then.
Okay, she was still.
Yeah. I was still quite on the big side. And I remember crossing the line of the Wilmslow half, and that was the first thing that I was like, oh my gosh, I've done something for me. I'm good at something. The next day I was like, oh my gosh, avoid stairs at all costs. I was going downstairs backwards.
Yeah.
The first emotion I had when I crossed the line was that half marathon was how on earth do you then do a marathon, because that means you'd have to run that course again. I didn't run with a GPS watch then. It was just I just ran to how I felt. It wasn't until the next day that I realised that I'd ran 1:24 for my first half marathon, and it was that run then and that kind of that discipline and structure that running had given me that I think then led on to these last 12 years of adventure and running, because after that run I then did the Manchester 10K, so that was in the May, so a few months later, and I did that in 38 minutes 05. And then I spent the next few years doing sort of shorter races. I got my half marathon down to 1:22:31 or something like that, and my 10K down to 37, and then went into the marathon. But it was a trip to Malawi in Africa that would really sort of change everything to me, that what was important in life. I went there and I went across Malawi on a cycle. And I was so inspired by them. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. And I was inspired with how they just welcomed us into every village.
So how did that come about? Was that at the end of uni or?
So the Africa run, the Africa cycle came out because I bumped into a friend that I used to go clubbing with. So I was doing a lot of drugs at the time, and I bumped into him, and he said, Brendan, you're looking quite healthy these days. I said, well, you're never going to guess. I've not drank for ages. I'm not going out. I've really got into this running. And he said, oh, you might be interested in this team called Mission Malawi. There's a team of 11 people from Manchester going to Malawi to do a cycle to raise money for ActionAid. And I said, oh, that's something I definitely would like to do. So I went along to the meeting and then signed up, and that's how my relationship with Malawi started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So then I cycled across Malawi, and then I came back, and I remember sitting in Manchester and looking around at sort of people coming out of all the shops, and I thought, we've got all of this stuff, but no one seems to be happy. There's no one smiling, because the week before we were cycling along roads in Malawi, and we were surrounded by children running up to 10 kilometers to school with the biggest smile on their faces, and you just couldn't get your head around. It's like there's so much poverty and they don't have anything, but then they have everything. They have this kind of a happiness that we don't understand. So that's when I got back, and I, on conclusion, thought that we were really here to make a difference, and I was in a position that I wanted to do a job where I wanted to give back. So that's how I started to work with children with special educational needs. And then I became involved with FOMO, which is Friends of Malawi Orphans, that support 3,500 orphans in Malawi. And that's what inspired me then to go on and do bigger challenges, because that tied into wanting to raise more money. So that's sort of why I then led into these bigger challenges that I've done over the last few years, including obviously the Chester Zoo one.
Yeah. Okay. It's really interesting that thanks for being so open and honest with us, and the way you've just explained that in your words of talking about making a difference. And but I my question was about how do you stay injury free and do you not get injured? So from what you're describing, is it more of a mental thing for you that you don't get injured because you appreciate now that you've got this different lifestyle, that you've been to Malawi and you appreciate the opportunity to be able to run, or what do you put it down to?
For me, saying injury free. See, it's really interesting because I always keep thinking to myself, why do I not get a niggle, and how can I just keep going? So yesterday, when some runners came to join me at the end of the 38 miles, one of the guys that joined me said, "Brennan, you're still moving really well." And he said, "I thought you'd be a bit more,
stiff,
pain, a bit more stressed." And I don't know. I think there's an element. I don't drive. I've never driven.
Okay.
I failed my test years ago, and I was just checking on my phone last year, and I don't think there's a day go by that I don't cover anything less than 8 or 9 miles. So I just don't know whether is it because I walk everywhere, and my body's just been used to being upright, and I'm not being sat in a car. I'm on a job. I've always been in jobs where I'm on my feet for long periods. Obviously, working in a school with children with special educational needs, you're always moving. Yeah. Before that, I was in retail, so I was stood up all day in the shop. So that might not have any relationship, but that's in my head. That's the only kind of thing I'm thinking. That is it because I've always been upright rather than a job where I'm sat down for long periods.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Why not? I'm sure that would all contribute.
But going back to your mental thing, I think that's what a lot of these challenges are definitely. It's that mental breaking it down day in, day out, and not panicking. So I think a big percentage of why people go on and achieve them is definitely more mental than your physical.
So what do you? Because you spoke before, and this was really lovely that you spoke about going out, wearing the costumes to try and help take someone else's mind out of the day to day of lockdown, which is really, it's a lovely thing to say and do. But what do you think about? How do you take your mind out when you're running a marathon every day in July?
Well, I suppose I would compare it quite often to when I ran across Africa. I was running in 40-degree heat there. I was camping. I was cut off from every luxury. So if I was having a bit of a tougher day, like the chafing, or it was a day hot with the costume, in my head I would think, one, with the experience of my previous big challenges, I would think to myself, stay relaxed, stay calm, take it one step at a time, all those sort of things that you think about. And then I just kept thinking, with this challenge, I'm going back to a warm shower, my own bed. I can recover easily. I know the area, and you're not on the road just going, in your tent. And then I've got to, in Africa, I had to get into a warm tent. I was drinking water that wasn't in a fridge. So I just kept focusing on, do you know what? I've got nothing to moan about because I'm surrounded by luxury. So I just stayed calm. And then it goes back to that fun. The amount of people as it grew each week that people knew what I was doing. There's a road that's gone to single lane in Manchester now. Yeah. Well, there's a building site. They're building a block of 2 flats there. And what would happen is I'd be coming along, and one of the builders higher up would shout, "The penguin! It's the penguin today!" the crane would start beeping, and then before I knew it, the whole of Trinity Way up through into Manchester was just a sound of horns, and then all the builders shouting, "Go on, lads, smash it!" And so that then takes your mind off it because you're just thinking, do you know what? This is what we just all need. Don't take life seriously. There's a penguin running through Manchester and everyone's laughing. It's a win-win.
You mentioned the trams as well before, and so did you do the route? Did you do the same routes each time from home? How did you plan that?
So I have like 2 sort of 13-mile loops, and I have some 20, so they're bigger ones. But I would tend to rotate them around. So I had one that went into the city centre and did a loop, so I wasn't repeating myself. So I go out on the on the river and then come back on the canal, but then you tie in going through Manchester city centre.
Yeah.
And then my other one would take me out on the canal to like Sale, Chorlton, that side of Manchester. Excuse me. And then I would do a lot of sort of, I'd do a 6 mile loop from around Salford Quays because it's around all the water, so it is quite nice here.
Yeah.
And it was quite nice because it's quite nice to keep being seen by the same people, because obviously they would then start to film you and then share things on, and then it was sort of that ripple effect out. So yeah, it was.
They've become part of the story, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. And it was a really lovely story I just share with you, because I think it was lovely. There's a couple that started the Couch to 5K, and they bumped into me where I live one morning, and they said, they can't believe how far they've come. They said, we're only walking, running, and they've been a huge support. And then yesterday, as I was coming towards Chester, there was a car pulled over, and they both followed the tracker, and they both came out and gave me a massive clap as I went past, and they just said, you really inspired us to keep going. And it's like those little moments that are more special than me really completing it, because that's what it boils down to. You want to make a difference. That's what it's about, isn't it? Raising the money and making a difference and hopefully inspiring people, but me completing it in some ways.
That's amazing. Really brilliant. Cheers. Did you do all this on your own? Do you have anyone help?
So obviously going from home, it was quite easy. And with the COVID situation, I think you have to be very mindful of attracting too many people to join you.
Mm-hmm.
I was very mindful of that. I didn't really broadcast people to come and join me, even though it was a funny one, because if there wasn't COVID, would I have done the challenge? But because of COVID, I didn't have lots of people joining me because I couldn't promote it that way. Mm-hmm. But I did have handfuls of people at different times. There was a couple of runners that have joined me more than once. And so towards the end, the last 2 weeks, I pretty much had someone for at least 6 miles or up to 15 join me. So that was really good, because obviously towards the end, getting up the last 2 weeks, I would say, was mentally tougher, because not because of the costumes, it was literally getting up and running just around where you live across Manchester and Salford. I was just kind of getting bored of, because covering 26 miles is a big distance. Mm-hmm. Where when I ran Africa and John O'Groats to Land's End, every step you get into a point where you're thinking, right, we get to that village, that county, you feel you're on a journey of progress. Where the last 2 weeks, I really appreciated people coming to join me. I really did. Mm-hmm. And then the last day, I had people with me the whole way through. So they just did what distance they were comfortable. But then it was funny, because once they stopped, someone else would join, and then there were some people at the end. So it was a really special day yesterday. Yeah, it was really good.
Brilliant. And whereabouts did you finish in Chester Zoo? Which animals were watching you?
So anyone that's seen the BBC feature that is all over my social media, I finished in the inflatable rhino.
Yeah.
And then I finished just inside the zoo gates, and there was people either side, and then we turned around, got me to stand there, and right behind me on my shoulder was a big rhino, and obviously a bit further back. We were a bit conscious of me going too close to the rhino with my inflatable. He might have got a bit friendly or something. So I thought I'd keep a distance.
Brilliant. Yeah, I did see the coverage on the news as well. It was very, very good. Very good.
Yeah.
So how much money have you raised, and how do people donate if they'd like to support you?
Yeah, so anyone that has donated so far or followed or sent a message back, I'm really grateful, and I say thank you. We've passed 11,000.
Brilliant.
And you can donate by going on probably the best thing is my website, brendanrendall.com. And then it's on the first page is a link, which is the Just Giving, and that would take me straight through to the donation link. And obviously we're still accepting donations, because Chester Zoo desperately still need money. So anyone that can spare a few pounds, I really do appreciate it.
Brilliant. That's a fantastic amount of money as well, Brendan. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You've mentioned that you did a challenge in Africa before. Mm-hmm. Before we go, and I've met people like you before, I'm sure that this isn't the last of your crazy challenges. Just quickly tell us what you did in Africa before, and what you've got planned.
Yeah, so So 2016, I ran the length of Malawi, which was 27 miles, 27 days. I raised £35,000, and that helped build the school that support 3,500 orphans. That then inspired me to run the length of Great Britain as part of my prep, to then run the width of Africa, in 2018. So I left Henties Bay in Namibia, and I ran Namibia, Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique. So I ran out of the Atlantic Ocean, and then 98 days later, I reached Mozambique and ran into the Indian Ocean. That was 2,474 miles.
Wow.
I was running for 91 days, and then I lost 7 days to sickness and was put on a drip at the end, so anyone following knows the story there. And then I raised £40,000 on that one, and that helped build the boys' accommodation at FOMO, which was behind the school block that I built, helped fund build in 2016. And that school accommodation was for children that were too far from the school or sleeping rough or vulnerable, so at least they had a safe bed while they were getting an education. Obviously, I've had fun with this one. I wanted to run in the Northwest and support Chester Zoo, support something local. And then this is all building up to my dream is to run the full length of Africa, which is Cairo to Cape Town. Obviously, with COVID, it's really uncertain. Is it sensible to go and do it next year? I think I'm leaning more to 2022 because I think it's a bit. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen over the next year. So, but my plan is definitely Cairo and Cape Town. It's been in the cards for years. I feel I know what I've got to do it. So
how far is that?
6,300 miles.
Oh my word! What?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, I think you're right. It's times are so uncertain at the moment, and from even local regions to regions, it's different here, isn't it? So I'm sure that's going to take some planning. But wow, what you've achieved is, it's amazing what you've done for those children in Malawi. It's you should be very proud. It's absolutely brilliant.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. What happened in when you were poorly in Africa?
So I had 6 days to go, and I was on for like 93 days or something, and I felt great that day running. And then in the evening, I went to bed, and it was about 2 in the morning. I woke up and it was just water both ends, and I knew it was something because it was similar to what I'd had in India several years ago when I was traveling, and I knew it was, it wasn't just something that was going to pass. It was obviously something I was just unlucky.
Yeah.
If you're on the road and you're camping, I'm not, it's easy to pick up things. I was just unlucky. So I said to the team, right, well, we know where we finished. I need to get to a hotel because I think I'm going to be quite sick. Luckily, we had a doctor with me at the time, and then they recommended when we got to the hotel, I checked into a room, which was the first time for weeks, and he put me straight on a drip because he said, because I couldn't eat anything, so he just said, the amount of running you're doing, it's important that we keep you hydrated. So I was on the drip for 3 days, and then I came back, and it was quite an emotional end really because I was forcing myself to eat to get the calories.
Yeah.
So the last 6 days, I had 166 miles to get to the Indian Ocean. So luckily I successfully did it, and luckily, which ties it all back, is the children that joined me those days going. As soon as I started, I didn't feel great, but as soon as I started the first few kilometers, there was like 50 children running with me, and I was just thinking, do you know what? I'm never going to relive these steps. This is a special moment. Stop moaning and get on with it.
Wow. Brilliant. Amazing. Well done.
Thank you.
I'd all sorts of questions popping up. I'd love to hear more about the Africa trip, but we'd be here for an hour or two more, I'm sure. But when you do come to your length of Africa challenge, we'd love to get you back on again to chat to you about that before and after and follow that. Will you take? Have you got a local park run, or do you take part in any local events now? Will you when they're eventually back up and running?
When they come back, yeah. When they come back, I'll be going. I'm a children runner, so I've not trained with them so much because these challenges have all been quite solitary.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to getting back and doing some park runs getting back with children runners, and doing some community stuff. So definitely, I'm looking forward to it.
Cool, brilliant. Well,
Yeah.
Brendan, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for sharing everything you've been up to over the last couple of months. If anyone wants to donate, just remind us where they can do that.
Yeah, you can donate. Visit my website, brendanrendall.com. There'll be a link straight to Just Giving, and just donate what you can. Every pound really does make a difference, and Chester Zoo desperately need it. And thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for your support over the last 2 months. You've done an incredible thing, supporting me so much.
Thank you very much, Brendan.